We are super excited today to be joined by some colleagues from Global Fishing Watch. This is a really special organization that we've been working closely with for a while now. So, this webinar is extra exciting because it's like the culmination of a several year long project. So, we are joined today by Hannah, Paul, and Akina from Global Fishing Watch and Alea from the ODI. So I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute. We're just going to give it a minute or two as people begin to trickle in. So I thought I'd do a little bit of housekeeping at the start. We have got two ways for you to interact with us during this webinar. So there's a Q&A box that you can ask questions anonymously, or there is a chat. So if you'd like to ask the question so everyone can see, quite often people like to sort of build on your questions or comment on them. You're welcome to ask those in the chat, and we'll be keeping an eye on those. And we'll get to those questions and have that discussion after our colleagues finish their presentation. So please do so. In the meantime, while people are trickling in, we would love it if you would introduce yourself in the chat, say where you're from, say what brings you here today, or what your role is, what your interest is in data ethics. I know we've got, when I was looking through the list of people who'd booked, I saw a lot of familiar names and people who'd been on our data ethics professional course in the past. So welcome. Saw a lot of people who I know must be in Global Fishing Watch's network because there was a lot of email addresses that involved oceans and fish. So welcome. We're really excited to have you here today. So please do introduce yourselves. We'd love to see. How are you all doing today, panelists? How many of you are snowed in?
Pretty good. We got almost 2 feet of snow here this morning. So I don't know if anyone on the call is on the East Coast and has also been hit, but it's a blizzardy day.
Paul, have you
Oh yeah,
escaped?
just a light dusting here yesterday in just north of DC.
Oh, amazing. Meanwhile,
Just,
Akina, I assume you're basking in the sunshine of Spain.
Absolutely. No hint of snow in here. It's a spring already.
So jealous. Alea and I just live under cloudy gray skies of England.
Yeah, it's a very English conversation, isn't it?
It completely is. So, Global Fishing Watch is a really interesting organization. They are distributed around the world. Is that right? How many colleagues, or rather, how many countries are your colleagues based in?
it depends on how you count, but 30-ish, 130 people, 30-ish countries, and including consultants who are, the only person in their country. About 22 countries, I think, that where we really have staff. All the time zones too. It's a disaster, really.
Amazing. Okay, go on to the next slide. I'll introduce everyone. So, our panel today is comprised of Paul Woods, who is the founder and chief innovation officer at Global Fishing Watch, Hannah Linder, who's senior manager in technology and engineering and also one of the data ethics leads, Akina Luis de Azevedo, who is technical project manager and another data ethics lead, and Alea Himmelsbach, our representative from the ODI, who's a senior consultant in data ethics. So I'll be the chair. My name is Kay Achenbach. I'm a senior learning specialist and head of data ethics at the ODI. So Alea and I have worked really closely with Paul, Hannah, and Akina over the last couple of years. We're so excited to be here today. I want to turn it over to you now, so I'll stop sharing my screen. And Hannah, you can share yours, but I'd love it if you'd be willing to give a quick little intro of yourselves.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share. And while I'm doing that, we can all intro ourselves. I'll start. I'm Hannah. As Kay was saying, I'm one of the data ethics leads. I manage the data team at Global Fishing Watch, mainly building out our data governance, and data quality in our products. And I'll give it over to Paul.
Thanks, Hannah. So I'm Paul Woods, co-founder of Global Fishing Watch. We started the company 10 years ago, maybe 12. Slack tells me it was my 12th year anniversary last week. I don't know how it came up with that. And so we've been doing machine learning and AI and big data, remote sensing, satellite remote sensing from the very start, and making ad hoc data ethics decisions just sort of based on our gut until we decided to systematize it a couple of years ago. And we're lucky enough to fall in with the Open Data Institute as a partner. So I'm happy that we're able to tell the story here today. Over to you, Akaina.
Thanks, Bo. I'm Akainan. I joined Global Fishing Watch in 2024. I am a technical project manager, and I'm responsible for the overall coordination and planning for the tech and innovation projects that we are developing among the research, engineering, data, and product teams. I was invited to join the data ethics project in late 2024, early 2025. And those were my first contacts ever with the subject. And I was delighted to be able to dive in and learn more and make something out of it for the organization.
Thank you. So I'm gonna just start out the conversation today. We're gonna do like a brief presentation on who Global Fishing Watch is, what our data ethics journey has been, and why we're committed to building AI for good. If you hear any noises, it's just the extreme gusts occurring in the background, so excuse me for that. And I also just wanted to note, I was seeing everyone's titles in the chat, and it's really amazing. Seems like everyone's from very different fields doing data ethics, so that's really cool to see. Okay, so a little bit about us. So people are probably fairly familiar with this topic, but our ocean is under immense pressure. We as humans rely on it for our survival and our well-being. And not only are significant commercial fish species overfished, but along with that, the marine environment and its resources as a whole can be misused and potentially depleted. And of course, because the ocean is so grand, it's essentially impossible to see everything that's occurring on the ocean at any given time, at any given day. And that is where Global Fishing Watch came into play. We are a tool, an aid to help shine light on vessel activity and behavior throughout the world. We're an independent international NGO. We use different sources of satellite technology and we clean it, we aggregate it, we apply AI models to highlight different vessel activity, behavior patterns throughout the world. And our data is free and open for everyone to use. We partner with scientific researchers, governments, specific country governments, other international NGOs, and international agencies with the goal of reducing not only illegal fishing, but aiding in the sustainable use of all of the marine resources. And I'm just going to show a quick video here. This is highlighting, illustrating the different data that we, Global Fishing Watch, share. And it's showing the immense amount of activity that happens throughout the world, all of the time, constantly. And what I'm hoping to display here is that it's not just commercial fishing. You'll see shipping routes. Obviously, that can impact marine mammals, among other things, oil platforms, potential oil pollution. What's been in the news a lot recently is shadow fleets and the dangerous use of those old vessels. Forced labor can occur throughout the ocean, which is essentially slavery at sea. Just constant activity and potential misuse of that. So yeah, this map is created using a number of our satellite technology datas, all aggregated and highlighted together on the world map. A little bit more on what exactly our data is. We use several different forms of satellite data. We have optical imagery. We have nighttime lights, VIIRS, to highlight activity at night. Radar, AIS. What's not mentioned here is also VMS, so essentially tracking data for vessels that's transmitted. It contains things like vessel speed, identity, that type of thing. And all of that satellite technology is essentially used to not only highlight global patterns and activity that people can use to see larger trends occurring, but it can also be used to highlight specific vessel patterns. And this is a case from back in 2016. The government of Kiribati used our data to help highlight the illegal fishing of a specific fishing vessel within a marine protected area that ultimately led to a fine of $2 million for that vessel. And something I just want to reiterate here, you'll see those thin tracks, that's like the vessel movement, and then the more aggregated dots you see, that is where we've estimated fishing activity using an AI model. So it has always been imperative for Global Fishing Watch to consider something like data ethics because we are not only ingesting big data, but we are then applying these AI models to it to make predictions about that fishing behavior. And that is used for real world compliance. It's used by journalists to make statements about activity. It's used publicly. So to consider what we're doing with that data and how we're sharing it is critical. Paul, I don't know if you want to chime in there, and I also wanted you to give everyone the explanation of kind of how we got into the more formal world of data ethics exploration.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, so we, like I said, from the beginning, we kind of had our own sort of gut feeling for where to draw the lines. For instance, when we first started publishing this satellite tracking data with GPS data, we made a decision not to publish publicly locations of vessels that were less than 72 hours old. So that way we would not be in the business of telling anybody where boats are right now. But that was just, that wasn't some deep consideration. That was just a practical thing. Then 3 years ago, we were invited to make a proposal for the TED Audacious Prize, where they raise a bunch of money and they give you a big pile of unrestricted money to go develop new stuff. And in the course of proposing that, we found that the funders really were concerned about the ethics of AI. If they were going to fund us to work on it, they wanted to know how we were going to ensure that we didn't make something that was evil. And so we wrote into that proposal that we would systematize our data ethics process. And so that obligated us to do it. And then we started looking around for people to help us, and that led us to ODI.
And yeah, so that was really driven by Paul here. And then he asked myself to get involved as someone working on data governance and the data team. And then we also recruited Akina as well. And having that support, that leadership from a senior leader, and then some people dedicated to really focusing on the building out of it has been really important. Um, and so our first year was 2024, 2024, I believe. Yeah. Maybe the fall of 2023. But it's, to Paul's point, started with very much so realizing we were not experts in creating data ethics as a real framework and institutionalizing it at our company. And so a key there was building out our partnership with Open Data Institute. That's what we did the first year. And Alea will speak to that a little bit. And we also uh, built out our common language at Global Fishing Watch and understanding of data ethics. So another thing we did for internal support was build out this data ethics committee. And Global Fishing Watch is not only made of people who are tech experts and building these AI models and ingesting the satellite data, but it's also composed of people working on international policy, government relations, communications. So many different fields, many different perspectives. It was noted at the beginning of this webinar that we have people from all over the world. We don't work in one specific location. So having all of those viewpoints are really critical for building support throughout the entire company. And we meet every few weeks, and we've built out our definitions of data ethics for our company and our principles, which I'll touch on a little bit more. And the Open Data Institute really brought us a lot of professional training on what data ethics is that first year and what tools you can use for data ethics. So I'll let Alea kind of touch a little bit more on our partnership here.
So yeah, why bring in external support? As you heard, like Hannah saying, like the Global Fishing Watch already had like a strong interest, like it kind of already kind of formed the organization around the goal of embedding data ethics, started the squad. But an external support, like what we provided, was this kind of external neutral perspective. We provided tools. So we provided a lot of the training that was very bespoke for the leadership, for the squad. We built in and bespoke internal capacity through the data ethics professional training, as well as provided courses for the general organization to help the entire organization on board with the idea of data ethics and what it means for them. In addition, we brought in tools and kind of frameworks to help thinking this kind of embedding data ethics into the organization. And we were this kind of external convening body to kind of help facilitate candid reflections and discussions between very, very different groups in the organization. In addition to baselining the organization, we also helped with kind of continuous planning and road mapping as the process evolved. And we were this kind of body who provided external expertise and delivery support. So like kind of having this kind of additional or providing this additional resource to do a lot of the heavy lifting and also kind of make the organization accountable to deliver on their ambition. A key element to get this whole process started was the maturity assessment. And this is a quite kind of typical picture you would see like when you are at the start of a journey where an organization is already heavily interested and understands that their data ethics is very important to them. We measure 6 kind of vertical, kind of the organizational governance and oversight elements, skills, knowledge, staff and stakeholder engagement, data management, risk processes, funding procurement, legal and compliance. And we map them of how evolved they are. So initial kind of is like, it's non-existent, ad hoc, inconsistent, repeatable. It means like it starts to kind of happen within individual teams, but it is not kind of happening across the organization. Defined means that it starts to have some standards around kind of internal and external best practices. Then managed, it means like an organization is in a really good stead. And then if you look at the optimized level, it's really if an organization wants to go above and beyond and become a leader within their sector for data ethics. And having this baseline means not only for the organization to understand where they are across these different fields, but it means also like there's a kind of a tool to kind of define where they want to go as an organization and kind of map out this journey as they evolve.
Elia, can I just jump in? I just wanted to
Yes,
say
of course.
that maturity model has been great for us as a way to set our ambition with the rest of the executive team because you always have a trade-off here, right? You've got you have a team that is excited about applying data ethics, but it all takes time, right? It takes staff time, and so you have to justify the investment of that time. And the way I do that with the rest of the executive team that's not paying as close attention to the process is through that maturity model, right? So next year we're going to advance in this element, by one step, and that just gives us a way to break it down and make it clear to people what we're going to get from that investment of time and effort.
Yeah, and this slide is really kind of a bit of a summary of what we maybe kind of added as a value to the organization in terms of expanding kind of the perspective of the people involved organizationally. We were this external provider, like allowing the organization not to mark their own homework. And we allowed or kind of helped to build this and maintain this momentum to embed data ethics, because often, like when an organization start to embed data ethics, the resources are not very high. So having somebody else externally to be there, being paid for, means that the momentum is kept and the workload can be shared.
Thank you. Yeah, I very much agree with those advantages of the partnership. Um, and that first year, yeah, we were very reliant on establishing this baseline, building out our understanding across the staff of what data ethics is. Most of us hadn't actually formally like heard the term, let alone define it for ourselves. And I think we would have been spinning our wheels as a staff for a long time without ODI kind of helping facilitate that. And so that was year one. And then this second year was, okay, we've sort of established our understanding together. Now let's start actually outlining and creating that foundation and framework. And so this included a professional certification on data ethics for a few of the staff, myself, and a couple people working on key data projects that have strong data ethics implications. And designing and publishing our data ethics principles, which now you can find on our website, and have already acted as essentially like a guiding light, a beacon for what are we aiming for with data ethics? What do we want our data products to adhere to? So that was fundamental to establish. And then starting to actually pilot out this data ethics framework. I think sometimes it seems like a vague term, and it's like, okay, what actually is that? And it is literally a process for reviewing the implementation of data ethics in each data project and output, and ensuring that we are establishing plans to adhere to our own principles. So briefly on the data ethics principles, these are them. Again, you can find them on our website now. And they were established by a workshop facilitated by ODI. I think it was like a 2-hour workshop, 2 to 4 hour workshop. And then it was several rounds of ad hoc editing and feedback from the Data Ethics Committee. And then it was provided to the senior leadership at Global Fishing Watch, including like our CEO and Paul and others, for approval. And we gained that approval. And it is acknowledged that it's something that is not set in stone completely. This could be modified over years as we're trying this out and working on it. But looking at our mission as a company and our purpose, we thought through what are our key principles essentially of data ethics, and these are them. And so when we are looking at whatever we're producing and putting out there in the world, they should all essentially adhere to these 6 principles. And then the other thing that we will touch on briefly is this idea of consequence scanning, that ODI educated us on, and that we are kind of building out the rest of our ethics framework from. It's a practice that we are now implementing for our data products, and looking at really what is the goal of the data you're putting out there, what is the intended consequence versus what are things you do not plan on happening with your data that you didn't intend to happen, and then how can you mitigate and create actions so that you are moving towards those intended consequences and away from the unintended. And we call it this data ethics tool, but really it's also a project management tool. I've seen a lot of advantages of it in terms of expediting our teamwork and our understanding and our communication when we are releasing products. And so we've started to talk about this lots and lots and lots. It's been a lot of reiterating, lots of different presentations using this terminology again and again and again, and testing it out. And so that has led us to this last year of work. And I'll let Akaina touch on this a bit more.
Thanks, Hannah. I think that's where my role became more active in this process. We were not now we had a clear picture of what we were trying to accomplish. We had clear guidance from the organization on what were the principles that we were operating in. And then it came the part where we had to develop our way, our process to deal with data ethics risks and concerns, and how we intended to mitigate those risks for the different data products and processes that we develop. The big challenge here is that, of course, we have as Hannah was talking at the beginning, we have a really wide portfolio of different projects that touch on different aspects of the data that we create. Identity for vessels, optical imagery that can reveal dark fleets and vessels not transmitting their GPS signs, even public records for vessel registries that are shared with us from different governments. So we had a wide variety of challenges to address, and we were looking to absorb those concepts, those ideas, and those resources with the support of ODI, and turning them into something that it was our own, that our staff could understand and use as part of their day-to-day workflow, not only as a compliance requirement. And that was the work that we had to try to develop this framework. So basically, we had tested the process a couple of times, especially using the consequence scanning to identify unintended consequences in different projects. And now it came the moment where we had to think on how we are going to embed those tools into our workflows. And if you can go to the next slide, thanks. So the first thing is defining what we see as risk and what needs mitigation. Not all projects are the same. There is a difference between making an updated version of a dataset that we were already publishing since 2017, 2018, and making changes in model configuration that could have an impact in the data pipelines and change results that our users are seeing, and all the way to creating new models and creating new machine learning algorithms that could create new data. So we had to kind of try to separate and define what we saw as a significant risk that needed a in-depth discussion, and other projects that could go with a more I wouldn't say like a less complicated approach, a less heavyweight approach that we could see as something that we if we remain transparent would be enough, just to give an example. And so we started working with those different risk levels, trying to figure out among our portfolios what could be considered a part of those different levels of potential mitigation and potential involvement, and create different steps to organize the workflow to conduct a data ethics review. And this is not only doing a consequence scanning or not. This goes through assessing the risks and then having a discussion among the project team, submitting the reports to the data ethics committee, and then considering the consequence scanning, and then having a final report. So we created a series of steps that are actually project management requirements, project management milestones to every project that are now in the process of being embedded into the different lines of work that we are developing. And we are doing so with support of different tools, and we are doing so with support of ODI still using their CARE tool, which we use as a way to organize information and making sure that the output is comparable. And in 2025, we started seeing already through these pilots some of the initial applications and some of the preliminary impact of those new practices. We managed to secure funding for a new forced labor phase of work that included a data ethics plan and report. We were able to more consistently review different tech and innovation projects and make sure that they were following those requirements. And this changed a little bit about how we were doing the strategic planning for product releases, but also how we were pursuing to improve our model QA and reviews whenever the time came for us to do maintenance and do changes in different model features. In parallel to that, we also had the opportunity of publishing an article that tried to clarify the different uses and misuses of our fishing data, and to clarify how that data could be the subject of misinterpretation and what to do to mitigate those risks. It was quite an interesting read, specifically about the pelagic fisheries in the Mediterranean. So Hannah, anything that you want to add to the process?
No, I think that captures it well. I think, we're really at the stage now and progressing to this stage where we're getting into this very nitty-gritty, as I kind of pointed out, like how often should consequence scans occur? When does a data ethics committee review this? What if a data ethics committee says this is too risky, it needs to go to senior leadership, and we're trialing that out again and again. And the forced labor I kind of mentioned, just because I realized the way it was written is a little like shorthand. It's the way we say it, and I realized we didn't explain that. It's an AI model applied to data to detect potential forced labor on the high seas. So obviously there's a lot of implications for how that model could be used and using it correctly. And so that project just applied another data ethics review with a funder involved in the review, which was really great. And they came out with like very clear steps about how to repeatedly review the model, how to communicate the data a little bit better when we release it, like these elements that you don't necessarily stop and plan and think about without this review framework. So we're already seeing the advantages of doing this. And so moving forward, again, to Kaina's point, we have so many projects. Our goal is to focus on the moderate to high risk technical projects as a means to balance out the amount of effort this takes. But that will include doing this data ethics review process for a number of things this year. We are working on a new AI fishing model to improve that output. The fishing model is what I showed you earlier that was used for detecting an actual case of illegal fishing. And vessel classifications, how we define what a vessel is on the water. Partner data integration, that specifically, we didn't really touch on this too much, but we actually partner with countries around the world and ingest their vessel data. So obviously it's really important that we do that correctly and transparently with the partner. And imagery data as well for dark fleet detection. Did you want to mention anything there?
Yeah, I think this last example, it's particularly interesting, Hannah. We are midway through the process of reviewing this high resolution imagery project. And the risks here are not only reputational or misunderstanding of the data or generating data that could be exploited in some way by some party. It's actually revealing how small vessels are behaving in water. And we are talking about artisanal fisheries. We are talking about people with preferential access to areas for their communal fishing. And it's absolutely significant for the survival of those communities that this information is dealt with care and respect. And so it's been now a couple of years that we are developing these models, and we are midway through the process of reviewing how we are going to mitigate the risks of releasing this and how we intend to release this. And the people participating on this webinar will probably be able to see in the next few months the first stories about this data that are going through this process. So I think it's interesting because embedding this process to our workflows, we went beyond just considering the technical issues and started actually seeing the people represented by the data that are potentially affected by our work more often, not only our stakeholders, our users.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we just wanted to take a moment to discuss the challenges as well, not sell this as a perfect situation. I think the challenges with building out a data ethics framework. I don't know how many other people are dealing with this on the call, but it's creating a new process at a company is it takes a while to get people on board. It sounds like people are concerned that it's more work or, what is this thing? And so creating that understanding, the common language, the showing the use of it and the impact, how much time it could take you, what we're asking specifically, that takes time. And we've been working on it from the top down, but also the bottom up, at our company, which I think has been working well. Um, it's always like very exciting for me to see other people at the company saying like how great it was when they did a data ethics review and being really excited about it. And we are remote and we are throughout the entire world. That brings challenges. It's no specific person's job. Well, I guess mine. But very few people, it's not their exact job. It's something we're asking them to try out and do. And I truly believe it helps improve everybody's job. But yeah, that's a challenge. It's a time commitment a little bit, until it becomes a time saver. And I think those are the main challenges that we're working through right now. I don't know if Paul or kind of you wanted to say anything there.
I think it's also interesting to consider when the process is good enough and when are we happy enough with the results and what do we do with that now.
Hmm.
So it's not only finding what works, but also finding what works for us and what works for our users. So it's being definitely um, uh, something that takes longer than just a regular uh, change management process. It's being it demands more participation, and I think we've been lucky that our staff is quite passionate about this subject, and they want to make this work. Um, they want to make sure that our work does not disrupt uh, the world outside.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really what we're trying to do with data ethics at Global Fishing Watch. The goal is we're embedding this throughout the way our company works. So not just the tech side, although that's where we really want to complete these data ethics review for the moderate to high risk projects, in every single case. But we also want to then be consistent with that with how we approach our data partnership agreements and standards, how we, ingest our partners' data and we store it and maintain it and agree to that, and the data reports we handle, and then publicizing and quantifying that impact. Our aim is to publish our data ethics reviews and exactly what our mitigation steps are in projects, and get feedback, publicly on how we're approaching it. Um, and Paul, I will let you chime in here on really, the ultimate goal for our company.
Great, thanks, Hannah. Um, yeah, so we in the long run, our whole strategy is we take all of this remote sensing data, we try to map our goal is to map all human activity at sea and do it publicly, right? So everything we do, we're publishing to the world. And so we interact with governments, and we need our data to be credible. But because we deal with data at scale, we apply models to everything. And models are wrong, right? Models get things wrong. They always get things wrong. You never build a perfect model. So we have to make sure that when we get it wrong, we're not getting it wrong in a way that's really damaging to our reputation. And so the data ethics process is part of ensuring that, so that we can be a trusted partner with governments for the long run, because ultimately we're trying to convince governments to loosen their data and make it also public, which governments often are not uncomfortable doing. So this is a key aspect to our long-term success, is getting this right, and being able to do it very efficiently, right? Because I noticed in the chat, someone asked, how do you ensure long-term sustainability? And it is a challenge, right? How do you get, management and your funders to agree to continue dedicating staff time to this work, for the long future? Because as long as you're developing new models and publishing new data, you're always going to have this work. So it's a real challenge. So we've been thinking about models for how to do this, and including uh, sustainable business models that let us commercialize some of the data, right? Make it available for commercial use. All of our data is public for non-commercial use. So we publish it. You can just go get it, download it, use it, do whatever you want if you're an NGO, an academic, and for the most part, governments. But if you're using it to make money, then that's a different story. But a lot of our data has significant commercial value, which opens up new data ethics issues. That's kind of the frame. And so we've been doing this now for a decade, and we want to keep the platform running for another decade. So we need an efficient process that lets us skip over all the things that are low risk and really focus on the things that are the highest risk, and do it, efficiently with our staff time. And also, but it has to be fully integrated into our in our normal project management process, or we won't do it. We know if it's a special process, it won't happen. It'll be the first thing you drop when the crunch time comes. So baking it in and having it just run automatically is the most important part.
That's our presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. That was really interesting to see this summary of all your hard work and your plans for the future. So I want to start us off by I have a few questions to ask. Rest of the audience, if you want to chime in with any questions that you have, I think this is a really special and unique opportunity right now to ask questions across a range of roles in an organization. Usually, when we have one of these data ethics webinars, it's one person talking. It's often somebody sort of in Hannah's role who's talking about how they roll data ethics out across the organization. I think we're really lucky to have Paul here to hear about that strategic side of things, and also Akaina, who's been like very practical in terms of integrating it into the project management software and everything. So it's a real spectrum here. So I think audience, you'll have somebody who can probably answer your question if you're in a situation where you're thinking about doing this in your organization. I know that they'll all be able to offer some really interesting insights. So I'm going to start us off with a question, and I think probably all of the panelists will have thoughts on this. So my question is, what actually makes an organization ready to embark on this kind of journey? Who wants to start us off?
What do you think, Hannah?
I was looking at you, Paul.
Oh yeah. For me, the answer was I had Hannah.
I think the other day I kind of said something like a company's never ready to do this or something, which I agree with. Um, but I think what's unique about our company, I don't know if this is the case everywhere, but I kind of mentioned it, is that everyone's passionate about our mission at Global Fishing Watch. And I think the concept of data ethics is not only timely in literally every field right now around the world, but has always been timely for us. So that interest was immediate with the staff. And so when Paul said we have actual money to do this, um, it was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's get it going. And the participation was there. Um, but I think really like without ODI, without an external support really pushing us to keep moving, keep moving, keep moving, there could have been many times where we stalled out, I think. And I think now because we've tried out doing consequence scanning and seeing like the actual duration of time it takes, who you have to invite, like how much effort it actually takes, we've started to sell it to people, to different teams, and that has sparked interest outside of me bugging everybody about it constantly. So now people are, I would say, like, I have noticed much more willingness to participate in this within the last year, within the last 6 months. So now, even this quarter of work, we have 3 or 4 different consequence scannings occurring within project teams, which is more than we've ever had before, created by project leads and managers developing it for their product teams. And that's new. Like that has just started kind of igniting. And so I think that now that that flows there, it's working more efficiently, I guess I'd say.
But maybe I think it's also important to acknowledge like the leadership buy-in and the kind of the opportunity of having someone to coordinate this effort internally, as well as having an external partner to kind of keep that to account, has been very crucial. Because without that kind of coordination, the grassroots interest and the leadership, maybe kind of the momentum would have gone lost.
Yeah, I mean, bar none, you need the money and the senior leadership telling you to please do this. I think that's definitely needed.
I'll just say I think there were two critical enabling factors. The first was funder interest, right? So that gave us a justification to actually invest something real in it. But it's easy to just pay lip service to that. We could have just told the funders we were doing this and published some principles, and they wouldn't know the difference. The other thing is having the passionate staff. We attract people with very strong technical skills. We hire machine learning engineers and data scientists, and we're a nonprofit. We don't pay them what they could make in Silicon Valley, and we're not anywhere near that. So we motivate them by the opportunity to do something good for the world and see how their efforts lead directly to positive impacts. And so that makes I think we have a bias in our staff toward wanting to work on this problem. So that made it easy to put together a team of people who are willing to work on the side in their spare time to do this work, which is how it had to get done to start things up.
And to that effect, if I may add, I think I agree completely with Bo and Hannah to this point. I think also it was important for the organization to have concrete, actionable requests and expectations around data ethics, because this passion about the subject also might make us keep discussing things and keep pushing for more change and more oversight and more care around a specific project or a specific subset of data. And having this balance between being responsible and also having clarity of what we are trying to accomplish, what is the impact that we want to see in the world, was it's quite important for us to be successful in this.
Really interesting. It's so good to hear everyone's perspective on this. And I would, having been involved in the project myself, I completely agree with everything everyone's just said. We've had two follow-up questions in the Q&A that I think are really closely related. So I'm going to read them both, and then whoever feels like they want to answer can. So the first question said, have there been moments when the negative consequences or worst case scenarios, planned or unplanned, have looked so bad you've wanted to put the brakes on things, and how have you navigated these? And the next question is, when an ethics issue conflicts with innovation or delivery, is the final decision maker the same person or form as other business decisions, or do you have a distinct ethics decision route with genuine veto power? If it's different, what's the mechanism that makes it real rather than advisory, especially under deadline and hierarchy pressure?
I think I can start on this. Yes, there were cases where we decided to pivot or to change the scope or to rethink or release strategy around a project, around a data set that was considered too risky. I think the main difference here is that it's not a outside oversight body that is doing the review and that is making those decisions and reporting about this to leadership. It's the project team itself. It's the individual contributors that are actually delivering the work, that are also active participants in this process, and they are looking to find answers for questions that they see as important to their work. So it's not only that they are being required to do that because for force of compliance or for force of an organization trying to be safe in their work, but also to make sure that what we are doing adhere to the principles that we all believe in and that we all share. So I think that's at least part of the answer on how this affects us and how we deal with whenever these risks or unintended consequences get too much for something to be delivered in the way that we initially expected. Hannah, Paul, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, where we're at right now also is we've trialed out these data ethics reviews, exactly how long it takes to do a consequence scan, who should be involved, whatever, on different teams, and the output of that and what that should look like, specifically using the CARE tool. So you have these action steps that you want to take considering the consequences, and then specific like timelines and for those deliverables. And then we've gotten to the point where we've had this data ethics committee start to review these outputs, these table outputs. And then the idea there to the question about like who's overseeing this and who has veto power is that the committee, which is made of like, I want to say between 10 to 15 staff on various teams. We're specifically asking for people on different teams. There's analysts, there's researchers doing the AI models, there's a compliance manager, international policy people review these table outputs, and they're allowed to essentially flag if they see anything high risk enough that it warrants either the project team going back and us having a conversation about what they need to do to mitigate that, or we proceed on to a body of senior leadership. And that senior leadership are people that actually make the roadmap plans, what we're going to deliver within a given year. Some of that is grant required, not all of it. And so that group would have a discussion of, is this a project we truly want to put on pause, that we completely modify the output of that product, we rethink how we want to produce it, or maybe who we want to share it with publicly, privately, that kind of question. Is this something we delay for a year because we need to have more discussions about what this looks like? So that's kind of the elevation, the risk, who gets to look at it. Not one single person has veto power. And it's a requirement that we have different people across the staff looking at it. Ultimately, though, if a project was really, really high risk, it would be that senior leadership that has, I guess, the closest thing to a veto power. Saying absolutely we have to do this for a partnership, or yeah, no longer, we have to scratch this completely.
Yeah, that question was, do we have a separate decision-making process? And the answer basically is no. Once it escalates out of the core team doing the work, it goes up the usual business decision-making right channel. And if it can't get resolved at each level, eventually it would end up at the CEO, and the CEO would make a decision. So I did want to mention though the forced labor stuff, which is interesting, and the negative consequences worst case. We had a funder that funded that initial work to build a model to predict which vessels were engaging in forced labor. We built the model with some external academic partners, and then we didn't publish it. So we produce it, but we don't share it publicly like almost all the rest of our stuff. And that is because of the data ethics process. And the reason is because the training data we're using for it, we know is biased and incomplete. And the result is that you can end up, negatively portraying vessel operators from certain parts of the world as more likely to engage in forced labor when that probably isn't true. It's just the bias in the training data. So as a consequence, we still have not made that a publicly available product, because we don't think we can explain away the imperfections in the model well enough to avoid the negative consequences.
Yeah, the same applies for thumbnails of optical detections that we allow users to see but not to download in bulk, and to some of our GPS spoofing work that we share partial results, but we've tried to protect the models and the algorithms that create it in order for us to make sure that this won't be misused.
We had a sort of related question in the Q&A asking, do you think that the existence of this framework, which is provably embedded and continuously operational, one of the best defenses of your work against external criticism on the grounds of ethics breach and misuse of technical models, especially AI, most likely to come from the more powerful bad actors you've exposed. Do you think there's any element to that actually by having this data ethics so clearly embedded in your processes now, it lends credence to this sort of human activities you're exposing?
Yes, that is part of the executive level buy-in on this whole thing is that our reputation and our ability to work with governments is essential. There are bad actors, the ones that we call out for bad behavior more often than others that would like to undermine our work and our credibility. And so we worry about that a lot. And so this is one piece that we use to support the credibility of our data and protect our reputation.
And that's part of the reason too that funders are so keen on investing in this, isn't it, Paul? Do you have any thoughts around why funders care about ethical AI as our sort of final question of the day?
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess I have to speculate why they care, I think. But I think a lot of, certainly with some of the audacious funders, which was what really kicked this off, they were just worried in a kind of a general sense that they read all these scary things about AI. They're funding something that says it uses AI. They don't really understand it. And they want some assurance that they're not going to end up funding something that then goes and does someone accuses of doing something bad. And it's really very just that simple that they just want to feel that level of assurance. And again, that we could deliver that to that level of assurance to the funder just by saying we're doing it. We don't have to really do it. Uh, but by really doing it, I think we build the case. And and as you saw, right, we're starting to produce some scientific literature that goes around how we apply this, and all of that deepens the credibility behind what we're doing and makes it more defensible.
Not only that, oh, sorry, Akana, you carry on. You're gonna say something? Oh no, I'll carry on then. Yeah, I just wanted to add to that as Alea and I have sort of worked with Global Fishing Watch through this project. One of the things we were just continuously struck by is how much all the staff at Global Fishing Watch really care. So I think that passion was there, as people have mentioned, and I'm sure maybe I'm putting words in your mouth here, but I'm sure it must help retain really creative, ethical staff when you can make the point to them that, yeah, we are using AI and we're doing it in a good way. Any thoughts on that?
What do you think, Hannah? Does it help us with retention?
I think for us personally, like our company, it does very much. And I think it's really important to like that's the ground up thing for voices to be heard. And it's not is we're talking about data products, but it's so critical to have the perspective of like a tech person really familiar with AI models, but also the person on the ground who's like actually working with the people who are impacted by our data. We don't want to just be this, cloud in the sky people who call certain vessels out, and we're not realistic about who's really impacted in the world by these choices and these AI models. And so having people allowing people to voice these concerns, not only voice them, but actually us make adjustments to projects based on that, I think is definitely important for retention.
It's really good to know. Right, we are at time. Unfortunately, it's been such an interesting conversation with you all. So thank you all so much for contributing. I hope this is the first of several in a series with Global Fishing Watch. As was mentioned throughout the presentation, there were other staff. So Hannah's one of the staff that completed data ethics professional training. There are two others one who works closely on the forced labor project, who's going to talk, hopefully, if I can twist her arm, to talk about using behavior to predict criminal activity and an AI model and what are the ethical considerations around that. And hopefully another one looking at sort of data colonialism issues around collecting data on artisanal fishers. So if you want to sign up for our email newsletter there at the bottom, you'll get notification once we sort of have those organized and dates. Also, our next data ethics professional webinar is going to be done by Alea here, who's going to talk about how organizations can embed data ethics and responsible AI. So Global Fishing Watch took an approach, where they hired an external consultancy, us. They had a lot of support from us. They had funding for that. There are other approaches. So Alea is going to be talking about that. So please do sign up. We also, I want to make everyone aware, we have 2 data ethics training courses that are coming up. One that's a short 3-hour intro to data ethics, if you think you might want to do it. So that's on the 17th of March. And I believe there will be a link dropped in the chat. And our next cohort of data ethics professionals also starts in March if anybody would like to certify. So thank you all so much. We really appreciated all your questions in the chat. I'm sorry we didn't get to them all, but I'm sure that someone from Global Fishing Watch will happily follow up with you if you like. So thanks again to our colleagues from Global Fishing Watch. We're so glad you're here, and it was really interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.